There's guys like Ben Shapiro who, I mean, shit, man, 5 years ago, I used to listen to the guy and be like, fuck, this guy is smart. You know, like if he says something and it carries a lot of weight, he's obviously an intelligent guy. I look at that guy, he's like, look like a fucking moron today. And nobody likes him. Everybody talks shit to him. And this was a radical shift. You know, Nick Fuentes has like 10 times the support that Ben Shapiro has. And I mean, you go back a few years ago and Fuentes had like 2,000 followers, he's banned on everything. And you know what I mean? Like the shift that has happened and the time that it's happened has given me some hope.
Dan Bilzerian caught Ben Shapiro completely off guard and challenged him point by point in real time. This wasn't yelling, theatrics, or a cheap viral moment. It was a calm breakdown that exposed selective outrage and highlighted how often Shapiro turns complex issues into one-direction blame. And the longer the conversation continues, the more difficult it becomes for Shapiro to rely on his usual prepared talking points. This exchange becomes more revealing with every minute. So don't skip ahead. Watch the full clip because the full context matters. After we watch it, I'll share my honest take on what this moment says about Shapiro's arguments and the narrative he continues to push. Before we start, comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown like this.
Yeah, I think it's also not just that they're flooding non-whites. I think the issue is they're bringing in people that have no sense of nationalism, that don't share culture, and that are also extremely poor. So you're solving for the worst possible candidates. And so I think, like you said, if they brought in some, you know, doctors that were Indian and they brought in some, you know, Chinese and, you know, accountants and whatever, none of it would be a problem. The problem is they're bringing in people that have nothing to add to the society. They're trying to, you know, take from the society. They have no allegiance to the country. And now you're having problems. And I think what that does in the country is now, you know, some of the whites say, oh, well, you know, now we have an Indian problem, or we have a Muslim problem, or we have this, or we have that. And they're not focused on who's running the country and who's actually causing these problems. And I think that's a common thread that I see, you know, and you got guys like Tommy Robinson screaming from the fucking rooftops, but he's not focused on who is destroying his country from within. And that's what's happening. And you see that, that's a common thread, is these countries are imploding from within. And it's because the leadership doesn't actually care about the people. And so the agenda that they're pushing and the decisions that they're making aren't in the best interest of the country. And that's why you see these disasters unfolding. And everybody gets so preoccupied with, like, you know, the influx of poor Indians that are in their neighborhood now, or the blacks that are causing crimes on the subway, or, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, oh, we have a black problem, we have a Democrat problem. Everybody's so confused, when the truth of the matter is the are causing the majority of these fucking problems. Our access to information, and I think Elon opening X up, it's not completely free speech, but it's the closest thing we've got.
It's true. He banned me. Yeah. He banned me.
Yeah.
His whole organization the same day they got all of them.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's definitely not totally free. And they're absolutely have, you know, these Zios in there, these Israelis that are monitoring things and that have two sets of rules of like what you can say about Jews and other people. But I'm saying the conversation is happening. And if you look at the comments, you look at the comments on every single senator, every single politician. I mean, they're just getting absolutely roasted. And it's not like half the comments. It's not like 60%, 90% of the comments.
Yes.
And so, you know, I know that Twitter is not a perfect representation of the rest of the world, but if that many people know, and that many people go home for Thanksgiving and tell all their family members, and they start researching, you know, because I woke up my uncle, he was like a typical, you know, lifelong evangelical Christian that really thought that we had to support Israel. And it's funny, it took me a while, but I pilled him. And I remember my other uncle, who was like a, you know, Hitler supporter and everything else, going nuts. He's like, I've been saying this for 50 fucking years, and now you listen to this fucking guy, you know? And it was one of those things, but like, I woke him up, and I think Candace, well, I can't say I did, but I started it. And I think Candace really opened his eyes, because he watched Candace, and, you know, he respected her opinion. And when you hear multiple people saying it, and then you start to do the research and you find out, like, this isn't as bad as I thought, it's worse. And you keep finding that out. I mean, people don't like getting lied to, man, you know? And, and so I think it's going to happen a lot faster. It's just the question. They're just not going to hand over the keys, right? Like they're not going to go down without a fight. Still. So the question is, like, how crazy are they going to get? And I think they're going to get pretty fucking crazy. However, the crazier they get, I think the faster it accelerates people waking up. Because guys like Ben Shapiro, who, I mean, shit, man, 5 years ago, I used to listen to the guy and be like, fuck, this guy's smart. You know, like if he says something and it carries a lot of weight, he's obviously an intelligent guy. I look at that guy, he's like, look like a fucking moron today. And nobody likes him. Everybody talks shit to him. And this was a radical shift. You know, Nick Fuentes has like 10 times the support that Ben Shapiro has. And I mean, you go back a few years ago and Fuentes had like 2,000 followers, he's banned on everything. And you know what I mean? Like the shift that has happened and the time that it's happened has given me some hope. The way I look at the left is they're just regurgitating the talking points that they got from the Jewish media. So like, yeah, they're wrong, but why are they wrong? Because the Jewish media is programming them with this absolute fucking nonsense because they're in lockstep with what they say. It's all the same. Like they all repeat the exact same shit. They're all like, you know, pro-transgender, which just think about that on its face, right? That's just like 1% of the population, which, you know, has obviously like a mental problem. And we are going to cater to that. We're going to have those people read to our kids in school. We're going to allow a man to have his in the girls' locker room now. That's okay. Like, it's just insanity, right? So the idea that the left all kind of like just thinks like this, it's not the case, man. They are told what to think, and they're told what to think by the media. So I truly believe that when people kind of like zoom out and look at this, because I agree with you, we've never been more divided. It's never been more right against the left, you know, left against the right. The left think it's Nazis and the right thinks it's these crazy liberals, and the whites think it's the blacks. The blacks think the whites have been suppressing them and they're responsible for slavery, even though it was the Jews that brought them over here. You know, and everybody has this thing that, you know, the Christians now are starting to think it's the Muslims because the Jews have imported a ton of like super poor military age Muslim men from war-torn countries. And so it's like, yeah, they happen to be Muslim, but it's not because they're Muslim that they're causing these problems. Like, it's against Islam to rape. Like, it is explicitly against, you know, rape. But when you have people that are, you know, 19 years old and they're coming from a country that just got the shit bombed out of them and they have no allegiance, no money, and they're basically operating with impunity, they're going to act like assholes. And that's not a Muslim problem. It's a poor immigrant problem. We have it from Mexico. Mexico is like 98% Christian. You guys have a bunch of Indians. I don't know if Indians are Hindu or, you know, what their religious makeup is, but it doesn't matter to me, right? Like the blacks from Ethiopia are mostly Christian. They're causing a shitload of problems in Minnesota. And Somalians are causing the exact same problem. Somalians are mostly Muslim. Ethiopians are mostly Christian. It doesn't matter their relationship. They're poor black guys from a country that, you know, has basically like a complete moral decay. I mean, they've been chopping each other's arms off, murdering each other in Africa for hundreds of years. And when you bring those people to a place like Minneapolis, you're going to have issues. And it's not but like I said, they've tried and paint it as like, oh, we have a Muslim problem. It's like, no, you have a poor immigrant problem because Jews have opened the borders and brought people to America or allowed them to come to America. And so my message is more of like, I think people need to wake the fuck up and come together against what the real problem is. You know, I have a lot of like white supremacist friends and I respect their opinion and whatever, you know, everybody's got the right to their opinion and I get it. You know, I understand it. Whites are absolutely unequivocally being attacked. There's no denying that. There is white replacement. There is an attack on whites, but it's coming from the media. That's who's telling everybody that it's not okay to be white. That's why there's anti-white training at Coca-Cola. It's because BlackRock, all execs are fucking is forcing this DEI message. So like when I look at where it's all coming from, it all goes back to the same source. So like this idea that like the liberals and blacks and Muslims, like that doesn't win.
What becomes clear in this moment is how familiar, almost predictable, this narrative has become. It's the same cycle. Point at immigration, point at a religious group, and frame them as the source of every social challenge. Meanwhile, the people actually shaping the policies, the ones making decisions that affect families, communities, and futures, remain untouched and unmentioned. And what makes this moment stand out is who is naming that pattern. Dan Bilzerian is not someone most people associated with political clarity. He's known for lifestyle headlines, not social critique. Yet here, he cuts through noise more sharply than many on-air analysts, and it resonates because he speaks plainly, without scripts, jargon, or prepackaged language. Sometimes honesty is simply someone saying, "This doesn't add up." Dan's point lands because it zooms out. You can't destabilize regions, displace millions through conflict, send people across borders without support, and then pretend that identity or faith alone explains every struggle that follows. That kind of framing isn't just inaccurate. It redirects the public away from asking bigger questions. Who set the policies? Who profits from the aftermath? And who wants people too divided to notice? This is where certain commentators become convenient amplifiers. Their outrage keeps attention pointed downward, toward everyday people, rather than upward toward systems and decision makers. When communities blame one another, leadership failure is left unchallenged. That is the real distraction. Dan's criticism hits harder because it comes from disappointment, not rivalry. He says openly, he once respected Ben Shapiro. A lot of people did. But audiences are noticing when consistency disappears. Arguments that once felt sharp now feel rehearsed, and comment sections reflect that shift. When trust erodes, fast talking can't restore it. And beneath all of this is a universal truth. Most people don't mind being wrong, but they do mind being misled. The moment someone realizes they've been given selective information or shifting standards, the confidence they once had in a voice disappears, sometimes overnight. The debate around immigration and faith reveals this clearly. Crime and instability aren't determined by religion. They're shaped by conditions, poverty, displacement, and lack of opportunity. When young people are uprooted from war zones and dropped into unfamiliar societies without support, outcomes can go wrong. Naming that isn't an excuse. It's honesty about cause and effect. What unsettles people most in this moment is that Dan isn't trying to win approval. He isn't polishing his message. He's speaking from what he observed. And that authenticity cuts through more than studio lights ever could. Social media only accelerates it, because people now compare narratives with lived experiences and footage, not just talking heads. Once that curtain is pulled back, old scripts lose their power. We stop hearing certainty and start hearing fear behind the words. And when someone exposes a long-protected narrative, the reaction is always the same. Instead of debate, there are labels. Instead of answers, there is deflection. Dan didn't yell. He simply named the contradiction. And that alone revealed how fragile some narratives really are. Because once people recognize the blame has been misplaced, it becomes harder than ever to sell the same story again.